Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, cheer as you steer your Vauxhall Cavalier into a severe reappear in Kashmir here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of wondering just how many actual rhymes I can fit into this little intro bit that remains to this day the hardest thing for me to script in every single video I do. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Meer album, Wheels Within Wheels. Sometimes I'll hear a band and I will immediately be able to recognise the untapped and barely restrained potential behind the music, which is precisely what I felt 3 years ago when I heard Norway's Meer and their sophomore album Playing House. This talented octuplet of a band had laid the foundations for a true powerhouse of the modern progressive rock genre, but there was something a little lacking, shall we say, in the overall refinement of the experience that I couldn't quite place my finger on. Now, don't get me wrong here. Playing House is one of those albums that has grown on me quite substantially since I first listened to it, and it's been one of those records that I'll consistently come back to. But by the time it's done, I'm always left feeling ever so slightly unsatisfied, despite how great the record technically is on almost every conceivable level. Now you can probably hazard a guess where I'm going with my inevitably drawn-out preamble before I actually start talking about the album that you clicked on this video to learn about. Will Mr. Signatures have seen Wheels Within Wheels as a disappointment? Have Meer failed to learn anything since Playing House? Or is this a full-bodied realisation of all the potential that Meer have been toying with, and have the last 3 years been a slow burn into one of the absolute best examples of modern progressive rock? Of course it's the latter. You've seen the thumbnail, right? So, who are Meer? This lovely, somewhat stacked roster of individuals comes from Hedmark in Norway, and while they were conceived as a duo back in 2008, they ultimately decided on the Catholic approach to expanding this little family, and we've now ended up with a band whose numbers exceed even the mighty S Club 7. However, unlike S Club 7, Meer are actually musically talented, so I think this round goes to Norway over the United Kingdom, even if it seems unlikely that Meer have the dance moves of one of the great musical mistakes of the late 90s, but I will be delighted to be proven wrong on this one, guys. Wheels Within Wheels is their third full-length studio album, following up their self-titled debut in 2016 and the earlier mentioned sophomore Playing House in 2021. And it feels as if the band are truly channeling a meteoric rise in terms of not only their technical abilities as musicians, but also their compositional skills as songwriters, as Wheels Within Wheels represents a near-perfect balance between showing off and playing up to the crowd with typical Nordic reservedness and humility, to have crafted a near-perfect album with only the merest of minor blemishes marring its otherwise perfect complexion. I don't know though, perhaps I'm just getting swept up in the hype as I am so often guilty of, but one thing has remained abundantly clear to me over the past few days. Friday the 23rd of August saw nearly 10 new records that I was hyped for coming out, but out of all of those, it's Meer who've captured my imagination the most and kept me utterly enthralled at the expense of everyone else on the release schedule. So, anyone who's familiar with the bands noted in the For Fans Of at the start of this video will have a pretty good idea of what kind of music you're likely to expect here. Now, I hate to use a catch-all term for a band like this, but I suppose indie modern prog is about as blanket a genre specification as I could apply to the band, but do bear in mind that's an extremely broad generalisation to slap on to Wheels Within Wheels. Now, one of the greatest strengths of Meer as a band is how they've been able to bring so many regular players to the field in terms of the instrumentation and vocal deliveries. With two primary lead vocalists making up both male and female sides of the coin, and permanent band members dealing with more specialist instruments like the violin and the viola, it allows for a greater and more focused use of these particular sounds and allows the band to employ very specific methodology to their use. Now, a lot of bands will have a session violin player or a guest spot on certain tracks, but Asa Ree and Ingvild Nordsoga Sandvik are fully comped members of the band, and as such their contributions on these stringed instruments have been ingrained in the songwriting from the ground up. A fact which is felt very strongly on every single track on the record. But far from feeling like your typical progressive rock with some classical influences, the use of the violin and the viola is done in such a fashion here that it feels like a creation all of Meer's own doing. It results in music that has the grandiosity and classical feeling of more symphonic compositions, but the fluidity with its incorporation into the basest elements of the band's DNA gives it a level of warmth that is seldom experienced within this niche of music. As you can probably tell, I'm a big fan, but the remaining players here are certainly no slouches in their respective fields. Ivan Stromstad's guitar work is especially good, and you get a really fantastic taste for just how clever, emotive, and affecting his playing is on tracks like Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. There's a beautiful sense of understanding to how it all comes together, and how Meer have understood how to let each part of this 8-limbed machine have their time in the sun without anyone dominating or pushing too hard to get to the front of the line. This is a band who understand each other, who've grown and evolved from the original duo into a musical hydra of exceptional ability and communication. It is a tough ask to expect this kind of restraint and fluency from any band exceeding 5 members, let alone one with 8. It is a true credit to how well everyone understands the assignment when you can have such a crowded roster without the music ever feeling cluttered or bogged down under the weight of too many cooks. But going to more specifics of individual songs, what I really appreciate about Wheels Within Wheels is just how well it manages to allow each track to feel set aside from the other without it ever feeling like a complete mismatch of differing styles and attitudes. From the dreamy and effervescent opening track of Chains of Changes to the veering on metal of album closer This Is the End, Meer have crafted a delightful menu for the discerning listener, and it really is hard to decide on my overall favourites on the album. Now, the first track that really gave me the wow factor was the 4th song of Come Too Light, which has one of the most uplifting and emotional payoffs towards its climax that I've ever heard. For a 5-minute long piece, the band really did manage to pack in one heck of a build-up and subsequent reward at the end of it all. Now, I'm not going to spoil too much about it, but goosebumps will be involved, I practically guarantee it. And that's kind of the album in a nutshell. Now, there's not a huge amount of traditionally long-form progressive rock song structuring here. The longest track is just over 9 minutes, with a typical length at around 5.5 minutes long. The album itself clocks in at around an hour, which honestly feels just about perfect for the kind of music we have here. Each song hangs around for just about the right amount of time. Now, I usually find myself longing for a 15-minute epic from this kind of progressive rock band, but I think Meer have proven on this album that that's just not their style. I don't think it would really work for them. What they have here is a practically perfect formula, and it really wouldn't make much sense to be differing from that. We have catchy and memorable choruses and hooks as seen in songs like Behave, Something in the Water, and To What End. We've got dreamy soundscapes and textured atmospherics in Mother, Take Me to the River, and Come to Light, and we even have darker and heavier moments as seen on This Is the End. And it all makes for an album that is honestly quite startling in its variety and bold songwriting choices. Sometimes I really struggle with this section. Ultimately, no album is really perfect. Not even My Beloved Colours by Between the Buried and Me is immune to my scathing eye of objective criticism. But Wheels Within Wheels has really challenged me to find anything genuinely negative about it. At times it feels like I'm standing over a puppy with a slipper in my hand. I just can't do it. But I have aspirations of being a real music critic here, so I've had to think of a few things that have irked me, even if at the end of the day, some of these negatives are really just me fulfilling some sort of self-imposed checklist obligations for the sectional style of music video review format that I've concocted for myself, to which I hold no loyalty or contract to. Anyway, enough of my waffling. Eighth track, World of Wonder, is kind of the odd one out on this album, being a weirdly separate interstitial 90-second long atmospheric piece, and I have to wonder why this simply wasn't absorbed as an outro to the preceding piece or an intro to the following one. I don't know, maybe there was some sort of contractual obligation to make an 11-track record? I don't know. I have no idea, but like I said, it's minor blemishes that I'm just vocalising into bigger deals than they actually are. Also, the final track of This Is the End finishes so abruptly that on my first listen I was taken aback a little bit. I mean, it's not exactly pull me under or anything, but with the way the rest of the record has been, I was expecting a slightly gentler, more drawn-out finale rather than the "oh shoot, it's ended" that we're actually being given. And finally, this isn't the most immediately accessible album I've heard. It did take me a grand total of 3 full spins before I started to fully appreciate the scale and creativity of the music being presented to me. So I suppose the impatient of you out there may find this a little frustrating. But if you're that way minded, then I have to raise a quizzical eyebrow as to why you're listening to progressive rock, one of the most famously slow burn of all genres out there. So, what else can I possibly say about Meer's Wheels Within Wheels? Now, my contemporaries in the YouTube prog rock field have been having a field day with this one, with extremely positive reviews from Nathan on Shuffle, Notes Reviews, and The Prog Corner all coming out in the last few days. But I'm sat here thinking I'm just little old me, the beardy weirdy with a leaning towards the heavier, nastier, scarier sound of the progressive spectrum. I started wondering if this lighter, softer touch would be as much for me as it was for them. Good lord, I'm so glad to be on the same team with this album because frankly, Wheels Within Wheels is a genre-defining masterpiece of modern progressive rock. This is special. This is an album that feels so thoughtful and genuine. A record that's been made for the artistry and the love of music above all else. It is haunting, it is memorable and emotionally affecting in ways I wasn't ready for. And while I'm not sure this is likely to threaten my own personal top spot for Album of the Year, it's certainly one of the best pure progressive rock albums I've had the pleasure of listening to in 2024, and deserves to be heard by everyone with functioning ears. I've got my physical copy on order through their Bandcamp, and I'm very excited to add it to my collection, so of course I'm going to be extending that advice to all of you as well. Wheels Within Wheels is the culmination of everything Meer have worked towards, making this one of the easiest recommendations I've ever done on the channel. This is pure, delightful music that's almost guaranteed to put a smile on your face and light a fire within your heart. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or hated Wheels Within Wheels, please talk to me about your experiences with the album in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you have liked the video, please do tell your friends all about little old me, and please do throw me a subscription if you've been enjoying my irreverent content. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.